Okay, then. So it is at 10 o'clock here in the UK. Lots of people are already online from around the world. We are literally all over the world. Today we've got people from China, India, Thailand, Nepal, Laos, the Middle East. We've got Saudi Arabia, we've got Qatar, we've got UAE, Germany, Hungary, England, and we've got Brazil, Argentina as well. They're getting up early. Thank you for your time today. And a huge thank you in advance to David Ingram in Shanghai for agreeing to do this presentation. David has 10 weeks experience of this for many schools. This is just at the start of this process, and David is going to share his thoughts with you over the next 40 minutes. There is the opportunity for questions as well. On your screen, there is a chat function. So as you go through the session, if there are any questions that you want to ask, write them down in the chat function. I will monitor the questions, and then at the end of David's presentation, I will ask the most popular questions to him, and we'll go through as many as time allows. Please enjoy this presentation. Thank you again. Lots of people are online. Over to David. Thank you, David.
Richard, thank you. Great to be connected, everyone. We face challenging times, and it's great to have the opportunity to get together as colleagues. In terms of the aims of this session, I'm drawing very much on our college values, which you can see on the screen, and very much I hope as an outcome of today's session that I'm able to make a difference and be helpful to colleagues who are facing what we started to face in January. So I do hope you find it useful. The outline of the session, we'll start with a brief introduction. I'm going to outline our experience of COVID-19 in terms of the facts. I'm going to share some reflections, and as we work our way through, I'll be sharing and updating a series of learning points, and then open it up to your questions. So a little bit about myself. I'm British. I started my teaching career in the UK, and I've been working internationally here in Asia for 20 years. I started out at the Alice Smith School in Malaysia, before moving on to Kellett School in Hong Kong, and then Tanglin Trust School in Singapore, and now I work for Dulwich College International. This is my college here in Shanghai, and it's beautiful at the moment. It's spring, the blossoms are out, and it's just a shame that campus is empty without any students. We're part of the Dulwich College family of schools, drawing on our heritage from the original Dulwich in London and now schools across Asia. And really the students graduate worldwide to universities across the world. And I share the Dulwich vision and mission, and this is really important because I will be referring to this during the presentation, but hopefully useful for you to have an understanding of where we come from. So let's start with COVID-19 facts. So we were on the Chinese New Year holiday, 2-week holiday in January, and about halfway through Chinese New Year, it became apparent that coronavirus, as it was then called, was going to have a huge impact in China. And we got the word that campus would not reopen and that we would need to provide our community with online learning. So the holiday was due to end on February the 3rd, and that's when our process started for our students. Our staff got to work before that during the holidays. So the first fact, we've been doing it since February the 3rd. Our campus was locked, so we didn't have, the teachers were all over the world, our students were all over the world. There was no opportunity to come back. So I had some teachers who didn't take their laptops with them on holiday, some students who didn't take their laptops with them on holiday, and real uncertainty about what to do, where to go. We're just coming to the end of 9 weeks of online learning. I'm going to share some of the platforms we use. Tapestry for our early years students, Seesaw for our junior school students. We use Microsoft's Teams for our senior school students, and then introduce that to the junior school. And then we've been working with Zoom as well for our younger students. So, some of the platforms we've been using as a school. We've changed immensely in terms of what we're offering on Monday, the 3rd of February, to how we're going to finish up the term before spring break on Friday, the 3rd of April. I'm going to talk through that journey if that's useful. So what did we do when we started out? And I think a key point that I'd made is that we made the decision to start with what we know. And by that, I mean, we use Tapestry and we use Seesaw and we use Microsoft Teams when school is open. And with teachers and students all over the world, we said, right, we're not going to overreact here. Let's start out with the systems we've already got in place. The students have got their logins. This is how we communicate with parents. This is how we set homework. So let's start from that firm foundation of what we know. We decided to set out some real clear expectations for teachers. And so that was in an email. And as I said, I had colleagues all over the world around e-learning. And I'll come back to talk through that a little bit. We also set out a set of expectations for students and parents. We made the decision that it would be business as usual in terms of team meetings, processes, and procedures. And I'll elaborate on that. We also thought about safeguarding because there's so much vigilance over interactions between students and teachers online, and we wanted to make sure that teachers were secure in their practice in terms of kind of safeguarding. So we issued some instructions on that. We did some kind of online training, and we kept safeguarding on our agendas. And one of the things that we did straight away, and this is for me a career-changing kind of experience, is high level of communication and collaboration with colleagues. We already have that within the Dulwich group of schools. It's a very collegiate, collaborative culture. But we found here in Shanghai that schools and colleges that normally compete were now communicating and collaborating with each other, because parents, it may be the same in your context, were saying, well, this school's doing this and this school's not doing that. And it was really useful to be in touch with colleagues and to talk through, well, what are you able to do? What are you doing about the holiday? What are you doing about asking your staff to come back? And it was really useful to kind of have that. And that's been a trend all the way through. So let's unpick some of those. Clear expectations for teachers. There are protocols around if you're going to be doing online learning in videos, you need to be smartly dressed. You need to be kind of professionally dressed. We made the decision very early on that this wasn't a case of just getting through until this finishes. At the time, we had no idea that we'd be doing it for 9 weeks. And in fact, obviously, it's going to go on longer than that. But at that earliest point, and I think was the most important decision we made, was we need to do the best by our students. We're expecting, the full curriculum, the full experience from day one. So certainly in our senior school, our students were accessing their timetable and having live interactions with the vast majority of their teachers from the 3rd of February. And there was that expectation as these students, some of them working towards their IGCSEs, are not going to get a second chance at this. So it's really important that we are delivering a full, rich Dulwich curriculum experience. And then we had expectations in terms of kind of planning, collaboration, and communication. In terms of the students and parents, there was a message, particularly in our context of the Chinese New Year holiday, and again, some uncertainty about whether this would be over in a couple of weeks, is you need to be participating. Our expectations around your behavior online, your engagement, meeting deadlines, the quality of learning don't change. We will take the register, we will report back, and kind of made it kind of very clear from the beginning that we expected kind of full of engagement, with the understanding that look, if you're currently in a context where you're not going to be able to kind of download materials, or bandwidth is an issue, there would be some understanding around that. But what we said to kind of parents is, you need to be getting your children in a position where they're able to engage with the learning. Business as usual in terms of team meetings, processes, and procedures. And the theme of this meeting is around teacher well-being and teacher effectiveness. And one of the really important ways in which we've been able to maintain well-being is to make sure that our teachers have got someone to talk to, someone to support. We had teachers in the UK, working out of time zone. I had teachers in New Zealand kind of working out of time zone. And we really trusted our team leaders, whether it was a year group leader, a head of department, an assistant head, to maintain the lines of communication and the dialogue. And really exciting this week to have some of our teachers come back into campus for the first time. And there's a real sense of cohesion. And that's because we made sure that we carried on with meetings online, obviously, through Teams and through Zoom and through WeChat. But we wanted to make sure that those things that can work really effectively in school were maintained. And we didn't do that to start with, thinking, that's going to promote teacher well-being. We did it because we had the practical challenges of, okay, how are we going to kind of plan collaboratively? How are we going to kind of monitor each other's lessons? But a key piece of advice or a learning point for us was those regular meetings enabled a sense of well-being. And then processes and procedures, and by that I mean, in our school, and I'm sure in many of yours, we observe teaching. There's a dialogue about pedagogy. Feedback is given. We're going to seek feedback. And what's really important is we maintained our calendar of scrutiny and observation. And that enabled us then, as the deluge of feedback from parents came, as I'm sure it will do for you, we were able to make sense of it and talk about, we've been in those lessons, and know the students are learning, and procedures. We talked a little bit about safeguarding, but really important that remains on the agenda. As I said, we led some training and shared guidance on safeguarding. And there are some really important dialogues that need to take place. Students and their counsellors, university guidance, kind of form tutors time. And it's about getting the balance right between providing the support that students need and then protecting students and kind of teachers. And again, that's fine because we had those kind of online platforms and protocols in place. Where teachers or particularly counsellors were maybe going outside of those remits, it was in the full knowledge of a head of school, so that they were protected in that way. The key messages that we gave back at that time, I think a really important one: these children will not get this year back. I said that we were not going to settle for, well, you know what, we just need to get through the next couple of the weeks, or this is a horrible thing that's happening. Let's just get through it. I think right from the beginning, we thought, okay, your class of year 1 children, or those students working towards IGCSEs, the year 6 children finishing the junior school are not going to get this year back. And what we provide them is really, really important. And there was a commitment to doing that as well as we could. A message to students and parents and staff. And again, I'm going to talk about well-being here. It's going to reach out if you need support. And that could be on the very practical level, you know, with our students and parents. You know, if they're having trouble downloading something from Seesaw or a video, and that can be a challenge here in China in terms of kind of accessing certain websites. You know, when you've got 26 million people in a city accessing online learning, it has an impact on kind of internet speed, although it's been managed very well here, I have to say. And so it could be an individual teacher emailing a parent, you know, with a set of activities if they weren't able to engage with kind of lifetime learning. But with teachers, you know, that could be of a very practical level as well. You know, we had teachers who'd gone on Chinese New Year holiday to Bali, their visa ran out, or there was a financial implication of, you know, I paid for a hotel, this is going to go on longer, I'm not sure I can afford this. You know, we had kind of teachers, a lot of them who had not come back to Shanghai because of concerns around the virus. And it was about helping them with kind of flight costs, accommodation costs, and then some very practical issues. I had a teacher who was in Korea, hadn't brought their laptop because they were going on holiday. We arranged for our kind of Dulwich College Seoul to provide them with a laptop. And it was really what we're going to say is, as a leadership team, we need to be able to break down barriers that stop our teachers from teaching and our students from learning. And a key message, you know, and one that I'm going to look back at and at having that impact on well-being is saying, reach out, whatever that is. And, you know, your schools will be in different contexts. Because ours started with people all over the world, you know, we had to offer some very practical, sometimes kind of financial or logistical support. I think the other one was we're on a learning curve. We very much started with things that we already had in place. Tapestry, Seesaw, and Microsoft Teams. Nothing fancy, no innovation. We wanted our teachers and our students to be comfortable. And we started that, you know, from the beginning. But at the same time, we said is that probably what we're doing is going to need to change and develop. And we did say we need to be ready here to be open and to be flexible. And that, I'm really glad that we gave that message, because it could have created a kind of a mindset there. And some real honesty and vulnerability there about needing to support each other, about being understanding. You know, I had colleagues joining meetings, you know, and they were in Ireland and they were getting up early in the morning to reach their kind of team meeting. I personally line manage people in 4 different time zones. So my day was very ad hoc and very stretched. Some teachers more comfortable with technology than others, and just encouraging people to ask for help. And I think that openness around it's okay to say I don't get this or I'm struggling was kind of really important for that kind of well-being. We have a really great guidance counselor here at school, Martin Zarate. He was available for students, parents, and staff all the way through. And again, you know, in some of the communication that we provided, it was about, it's okay to say I'm struggling with this, you know, and I'm sure, you know, COVID-19, as you experience it through the world, creates lots of challenges, and I will touch on it. I talked about our vision and mission and why that was important, because we've been very values-led in the way in which we responded to the crisis. And I don't think we made a conscious decision, right, let's have a look at our vision and mission at the time. It was halfway through the holiday, but the decisions that we made actually really reflected our values as a school. So the whole piece about we can't go into this with a mentality of, do you know what, we've just got to get through it, we just need to survive, and then we can go back to normal. So let's just tread water until then. That's incompatible with our our values as a school about students coming first. And as I said, you know, we can have said to ourselves as a staff, these students aren't going to get another year 10, another year 8, another year 3. So we've got to do the best that we can. And at the time, we thought it was only going to last a couple of weeks or a month. 9 weeks in, and a real prospect of, you know, longer time to come. So glad that we stayed true to that, to that guiding kind of value. The other element here was about seeing this as a learning opportunity. We talk about our students graduating worldwide. Well, this is a learning experience about adaptability, about resilience, about needing to adapt and respond to challenge. And we've done this at a, you know, very age appropriate level through assemblies, through our, you know, kind of a PSHE or kind of wellbeing sessions, is kind of talking about this because, you know, viruses like this may return. This could be a reality of modern life, certainly change, you know, and you hear the acronym VUCA, volatile, you know, uncertain, ambiguous, and complex. You know, this is the world that our students are going to be graduating into. And we kind of felt it was really important that we integrate that into our online learning program. And then, you know, as we said, we're going to have to see this as a learning curve, you know, synced with, you know, our value of demonstrating a pioneering spirit. So if I take stock of, you know, some of those facts and our approach to the beginning of the outbreak, some key learning points is, you know, drawing on your school values and really guiding, using those to kind of guide the way in which you approach it, you know, as a teaching staff and as a school community. And when I look back, you know, those are some of the best decisions we've made, is where we've run the school in the way that we would do if we were all here. And as we've made decisions about how we do e-learning, and kind of that high level of interactive, you know, running the full timetable for senior school, you know, it's all relating to putting students first and doing best by them. And I think the other thing, you know, at the beginning, and I'm really glad that we did this, is, you know, there was some discussion, right? Should we investigate new platforms? And parents said, well, have you thought of this? Or are you going to try this? We started with things that we already had in place: Tapestry, Seesaw, and Teams. And I think that was really important in terms of teachers right across the world in this really uncertain, anxious time, being able to be confident about what they were delivering, about students having logins, being familiar with kind of processes. And then, you know, as I said, you know, in terms of teacher well-being, really expecting and trusting, you know, if I had a head of year 3, that they were in constant dialogue with their year 3 team, that they were kind of feeding back to the deputy head of primary, and trusting the systems that we had in place, the team spirit, the lines of communication to kind of run. And that links to the expectations, but I think trust has been a kind of key issue all the way through. But we made loads of mistakes. So I've kind of shared what worked, but there are mistakes as well. And I'll kind of talk through those and how that affected kind of well-being and, you know, what was effective and what wasn't. I think, obviously, when we talked with our community about closing campus, about the expectations for online learning, we communicated that brilliantly, and we were congratulating ourselves on a job well done. Then things kind of settled down, and we were waiting for guidance on, you know, how long is this going to last? Is there going to be a reopening date? And there was nothing to report. We weren't doing anything differently in terms of our learning. There weren't significant changes other than the spread of the virus, but at that time it was very much a China phenomenon. And so we kind of said, well, we've communicated a lot of things, and we've done the newsletter each week, and there was a real celebration of the e-learning taking place. And then because we didn't have anything new or extra to communicate, we stopped communicating. And that was a huge mistake, because then about 2 weeks in, our parents said, well, why aren't you communicating? You're not telling us what's going on. And our initial response is, well, because there aren't any changes, there aren't any key developments. But I think we quickly learned in this period, you know, where the challenges are uncertainty and anxiety, we have to communicate. And we then got into kind of a weekly communications plan. And I'll talk through that a little bit in kind of greater detail. We set up meetings with class reps to kind of feed back to us. And now I'll kind of dive into some of the learning. So in our enthusiasm to deliver the full Dulwich experience, there was a lot of learning to do. And certainly some of our students were just kind of overwhelmed because they had, amazing interactive PE videos, they had music videos, they had maths, they had English. And there was so much that, the feedback from our senior school students was, gosh, I've got more work here than I've ever had before. I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. We had junior school parents and early years parents saying, we can't get through this in a day. And this is a context where there was kind of lockdown. In our part of the world, people have helpers who kind of come in, but they were all away for Chinese New Year. They were locked down. So we had kind of parents who were running their business or doing their job online at home, trying to support their students for a full gambit of educational learning experience, and it was kind of too much. So, one of the really important learning curves for us was not to necessarily dial back on what we were offering, but to signpost it really well and to kind of make it clear, okay, Year 5 students, this week we're going to be covering these things. These are your musts. Okay, it's kind of really important that you're checking in for your daily maths lesson and activity. Really important that you're checking in for this, that, and the other. You should be doing at least one of our P3 PA activities. You should be choosing at least one of them. And look, if you're really into, these are the things you could do. So we'll cover a must, should, could approach, so that we were kind of, the less is more. We didn't want to dial back on the enrichment, because if you're a student who loves art or loves PE, I think it's unfair to say, well, George, we're going to cut that out and we're going to focus on the basics. But what we wanted to kind of make sure that it was more accessible for our students to say, right, I need to do this. This would be great. This is a nice to have. Give them some choices and some expectations about what needed to be done. That signposting, that prioritizing was really, really important. We found stress levels for parents and students improved significantly when we got better at that. So it was kind of clear signposting, clear labeling. The other thing then was around success criteria and what a good one looks like. We have a lot of EAL learners, and we needed to make sure, our parents were anxious. My English isn't good enough to kind of access. So we wanted to make sure that the students then had exemplar work, that they were able to engage with their teachers. As I said, we started kind of live learning for senior school, running the timetable almost from day one. So through Teams, using videos, and there was that engagement and interaction, which worked from day one in our senior school. We did dial that down slightly again for things like kind of PE or music or art. Students kind of could opt in and out of some of those sessions. We wanted to manage the amount of screen time that they had. That was another kind of big piece of feedback from parents. So sharing activities that they could take away and kind of do in their own time. So that thought around workload, that thought around prioritizing was kind of really important to us. And then just some practicalities. In our first week, maybe kind of the first 2 weeks, we wanted to do amazing videos. We wanted to be all singing, all dancing. And then there was practicalities that students couldn't download them or, you know, they had to wait for 30 minutes before they could access the learning, and getting that right, and making sure that the size of the videos was appropriate was a key learning point for us. So those are some of the mistakes we made. And then, you know, I'll share some of the follow-up actions. So as I said, we came out with a weekly communication plan, and we had WeChat, which is a bit like WhatsApp, for our class parent reps. And again, this builds on using systems already in place, using that class rep system to share with them, right? This week, you're going to get a letter from me on Tuesday. I did a kind of a screencast-o-matic briefing to parents on Wednesdays, and when we had our school newsletter on Fridays, and we had kind of weekly sessions with different groups of parents from different age groups to get that feedback, to communicate, to listen to their anxieties. And that's really where we were able to make progress in terms of signposting and prioritizing our learning, reducing download time. And that led to the increase in live interactive learning. So it started with extending teams throughout the kind of the junior school, introducing Zoom for our early years, and then changing that so that it wasn't just, do you know what, we're going to do 45 minutes on Zoom or 45 minutes on Team. It's, do you know what, we're going to have we're going to divide you into groups, so it's a slightly more intimate experience. There's more chance for each individual child to ask questions. We'll sandwich it. So we'll start with a session for, you know, input, the kind of teacher. Children are going to wend away and kind of worked, and then they log back on to share their learning with the teacher, or the teacher to kind of assess. So really using that weekly communication and the ongoing dialogue between kind of parents and teachers, and with our senior school students, the students, to adapt and develop. So we were kind of very much we became listening, learning, and responding. And that's part of that journey from the 3rd of February to the 3rd of April. What we started with is very different to how we're ending up. It was a gradual process, but communication was really important for that. In terms of staff well-being, one of the gaps we found was, you know, the type of briefing that we might do on a Friday afternoon, or, you know, a Monday morning. And so we had an online briefing, which, for those of you who are Monty Python fans, became quite humorous. And we developed a lot of humor through that. And we found for both students and teachers that we wanted that element of fun to be in the curriculum. So we believe in holistic education. So for students, we've still had house competitions, but they'd just be different. We'd have a house scavenger hunt where groups of students had to collaborate and find things in their house to get through the scavenger hunt. They'd have house singing competitions. So again, it was fostering that sense of enjoyment, that beyond the talk curriculum. And we're really glad that we did that, because that's been really important in one, well-being in terms of students. We did a similar thing with staff, and I've got that kind of picture on the screen. This is when, you know, we called staff back to Shanghai. They're going through 14 days quarantine where literally they can't leave the house. So we did an online quiz, which was kind of lots of fun. That was reflected in real positive outcomes. And again, another key recommendation for us and part of our experience is around reaching out to parents. We've done a series of pulse checks, and this is across the Dulwich group. And, you know, we talked about graduating worldwide. So some of those skills there you can see on the screen. We kind of said, you know, well, some of our students love this style of learning. They may be overwhelmed in a class setting to put their hand up and contribute, but on a screen where they've got that privacy, or you know, kind of over Zoom or through Teams, they've got a lot to say for themselves. And so we found different, you know, and independent, being able to prioritize, be able to manage workload. But the second part of the screen there, areas of improvement, this is where parents were responding to the way in which we followed up on their feedback, and obviously some positive increases there, where parents have said, yes, you've listened to us, and you're improving the quality of learning as a result. Workload, live interaction, and kind of screen time were some of the key issues there for us, and ones that I'd flagged for you. So led to an overall kind of increase. This is our kind of first and second checkpoint with parents and about how they're feeling, and it became much more kind of positive. We had some great feedback. I think all the way along, our parents have said, we know our teachers are working hard. We're getting feedback, and we're really important going back to students come first, and they're not going to get another chance at this. We said, you've got to, learning and feedback has got to be kind of dynamic. So we're going to reflect a little bit. This is a period of real anxiety, and I'm going to talk through some of those in terms of our teachers. So the first one, where do I go? Do I come back to Shanghai? At the outbreak, there was concerns about, am I going to get the virus? If I stay in Thailand or where I was on holiday, what if my money runs out? If I go home to the UK, how am I going to teach in different time zones? If I'm living with my mother-in-law, how's that going to last over a period of a couple of weeks? Anxiety for parents. Is my child going to miss out? Are they losing ground against their peers? My business is struggling. How can I support my 4-year-old child? I've paid school fees. I'm not getting value for money. These are real pressures. I think staff, students, parents kind of feeling isolated, and that they were on their own with this, and that was real anxieties, uncertainty, which continues. I still don't have a reopening date. Steps in the right direction. We've got our staff back in Shanghai. We've had kind of staff on campus, but that's a one-off, and we're not in a position to kind of reopen yet. Uncertainty about, and this will be the same in your country, about, how long lockdown's going to last. Are you able to get certain food in the shops? And that's an ongoing feature. Some negativity, people are going through all these range of emotions, and it is, that we have had negativity from parents to say, I can't cope with this. Can you just refund the fees, and we're going to sit it out for the next 5 weeks, and then we'll rejoin when everything's going to go back to normal. We haven't had negativity from our teachers. Have been really positive. We worked really hard on that as leaders, but also I think as students, as parents, and teachers. This is a really intense experience. E-learning, online learning, and everything that's going on around is intense. And you've got these world-changing things happening, that are unprecedented, and yet you still need to get your maths homework done. You still need to kind of revise for that French test, and that leads to kind of fatigue. And gosh, I've got teachers, students, and parents who are ready for that kind of spring break. I'm sure these are challenges that many of you are facing. So some further reflections. I think expectations and empowerment, and I use those, is that we've been really clear on our expectations for our teachers in terms of, do you know what, you are delivering the curriculum and the Dulwich experience because our students aren't going to get another chance, and I've kind of used that phrase. But also empowerment. When this broke and we knew that campus was going to be closed, we say, you need to go to a place that you feel safe in. Now that might be in your hotel in Thailand. It might be back here in Shanghai. It might be in your home country. We gave teachers choice over that. When it came time, and obviously and thankfully, and just a credit to the way in which kind of China's handled it, kind of here in Shanghai, I made the decision. I was on holiday at kind of Chinese New Year. I wanted to be back with our Chinese staff, with our expat staff who were here in Shanghai, and be at the heart of our community. And I felt safe, and it's been managed so brilliantly. But as things calm down here, and the strain of delivering live learning in different kind of time zones. We brought staff back, but again, we didn't say you need to come back on this flight at this time. We said choose a flight, choose a route that is going to work for you and your family, and we will help support that. In some cases, we will help facilitate that if you're having difficulty booking flights, because things started getting limited really quickly. But it was about giving teachers choice all the way through. And again, with e-learning, it was pretty broad. Okay, you've got to use Teams, you're going to use Seesaw, but we weren't dictators around what that looked like. So there was that balancing expectations with trusting and empower people to have some choices over, their safety, their family, and therefore kind of, their learning as kind of well. The importance of practical support, and I talked about the colleague in Korea who didn't have a laptop and we needed to get, people are challenging in quarantine, and then kind of saying, we're going to send out a care package of English chocolate and kind of fruit to help keep them going. Practical support for families. We're having trouble with the internet where we're sitting out quarantine. Making sure, okay, we're going to email you some of the activities because your children are kind of struggling. Are really important to act proactively on that. So as you kind of face challenges, those high expectations are important, but to back that up with practical support. And I think, again, a big factor in our teachers' well-being and the positivity is the fact that when they face challenges, we've provided support. I think the last one that I would share is, what is our school? It's more than bricks and mortar. And we are so anxious and so longing to have students back on campus and to get back to normal. But I'm glad we didn't go in with that mentality, because our school and our values are very evident in the way in which we conduct our online learning program. We do assemblies, we have house competitions, we expect students to collaborate, we promote our values. The way in which our online environment works is a reflection of how we conduct things here in school. If a student isn't behaving properly, or if their learning isn't where we're expected, we're kind of following up and communicating with parents. We're just doing it in a different way. I don't know how long this is going to last. It could go, into term 3. It could go into next academic year. It could go much longer than that. And so we're asking, that question, what is our school? What do we stand for? So that we're not limited to a traditional classroom or a traditional campus. And, that's exciting. It's challenging. So again, some of those learning points coming out, a really, really important one: live your school values, because, given those challenges that we talked about, anxiety, uncertainty, intensity, fatigue, and there is going to be negativity, you need to draw on values. We had a very difficult phase where kind of a group of parents, were demanding school fees, and what they kind of initiated an online campaign where they were putting pressure on parents on WeChat. It's a little bit like WhatsApp for those of you who are not familiar with China. And, there was online bullying going on between parents, and in one of my weekly briefings, we could have talked about our school values, being kind and respectful, and we don't tolerate this. And that was a kind of a key point for us. It was a reference point when, some of the quality of the learning hasn't been there. We've kind of gone back to kind of teachers and said, right, do you know what? We talked about students first. You get a group of year 3 children on live interactions where they can kind of message, and some of them are excited and a little bit inappropriate. And we had to kind of say, guys, you wouldn't do this in class, and that hasn't changed. So living your school values is kind of really important. As I said, build on what you already have in place in your school, and there'll be no shortage of people saying, well, do you know what, in this school they're doing this, and those people are doing that, and why don't you do it? But I would encourage you to start and develop what you've already got in place, and whether that's technology, but also, in terms of supporting well-being, through students, for teachers to be effective, is use the teams you've already got. And I think that's around trusting people to do that well. The processes around monitoring and observing or professional development, and that's been a real key element for us. We believe in professional development in a really profound way, and we took that online. That hasn't changed. We have lots of processes in place for professional learning. We're going to carry on. We're just going to do it in a different way. As I said, we learned the hard way when we didn't communicate, even though there were no big developments, there were no big announcements. Because we didn't communicate, people got really anxious. So communicate. I publish a weekly communication plans to our parent community so they know what's coming up, and that's really, really helped. And in fact, we had our last kind of online meetings with our parent reps, and they talked about how valued they feel. And because we had that regular dialogue, we were then able to adapt and act. And there's been a real transformation of our program through that. And I'm going to stop sharing at that point. As I said, the aim of this is very much to offer, our experience to support you. If you've got questions that you want to ask, please. We've had some successes. There are decisions we were really pleased with. We've had mistakes, and we've had challenges. And welcome the opportunity to ask questions.
Thanks, David. Thank you for that. There's lots of questions coming through. Some of which have been answered as we've gone on. Quite a few people have been asking about, obviously, the school year, how that's changing as well, because that's carrying on live. Some people were asking about the frequency of middle leaders talking with their teams. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, our school year hasn't changed a bit. But we did communicate with our community. We were prepared to be flexible with the timing on holidays if a reopening date, made that sensible to do so. So if, the local authority said, right, you're going to open such and such time in April, and there was a clash with a holiday, we would have changed the holidays. But because that we're not reopening yet, we've continued with our academic year. We've reduced that slightly. We're supposed to kind of break up tomorrow. We're just going to have we'll do that as a learning day. We've reduced our May holiday a little bit. We are currently looking at whether we have kind of a summer school program with a combination of teachers volunteering and external camp providers. But again, that's up in the air at the moment. We don't know whether campuses will be open to students at that time. But I would say that's changed. In February and March, that was a big issue. Are you going to do make-up days? Are you going to extend the school year? That perspective has changed. We're now 9 weeks. We're going on to spring break. There is no opening date. As this rolls out across, the planet, and there's fears of a second spike of the virus with people coming back to China. We may be closed longer. And again, I think, part of the journey for ourselves, and I'm sure many of you is, you can't go into this thinking, do you know what, we just got to get through. I think you can make sensible choices with your holiday, but we quickly moved away from, right, we can make this week up by doing a week in the holidays. Because I think if you do that, you're not doing right by the children. You've got to kind of focus on the quality of the online learning.
Yeah, great.
And in terms of the middle leaders question, we maintained the same meeting schedules that we were meeting in school. And, if we felt teams needed additional support, we would put extra in. Some thoughts on that. Obviously, it depended on the location of teams. So sometimes if you've got lots of people based in the UK, we would change the timing of it to work around a UK time. I adjusted my college leadership team meetings slightly to accommodate people working in different time zones. I found as a leader, I was line managing people in 4 different time zones. You know, my working day was long. And I think managing that, if you're in that situation, is kind of really important, because I think there's that opportunity for kind of burnout.
David, in terms of practical support for teachers, you mentioned some things. I think you mentioned, did you say a care package you sent out? What are the practical things that you do with the teachers?
Yeah, so for various, the kind of the message of, look, if you're stranded in a different part of the world, and obviously flights were cancelled, or if they said, you know what, I'm gonna go back home to the UK, or I need to come back to Shanghai, but now the flights changed, we provided, you know, financial support to kind of make sure people could go to a place where they were safe. Mm-hmm. We realized if people were operating out of maybe the UK and they didn't have access to their resources, we, if you like, there was an allowance to recognize the fact that people were living through extraordinary times, which we've maintained. Really important was about guidance and professional learning on, you know, whether it's safeguarding, which I've referred to, webinars on online practice, on protocols for, if you like, interactive kind of learning, and kind of feeding that into team meetings. So taking our commitment to professional learning online, you know, and I talked about how we responded to kind of parents, but it was also kind of thinking, right, these are needs for teachers, and this is how we're going to do it. So that, you know, kind of really important support.
Great, thank you for that. I do want to mention while we are together, because we've only got a couple of minutes, you know, a lot of the people, we've got about 100 people online around the world listening to this. One thing that I'm going to do with middle leaders is next week, you know, we do a lot of training with middle leaders around the world. Next Thursday, we're going to do a free session with middle leaders, because this is myself, not David, because, you know, being a middle leader is hard at the best of times. And so that's going to be a free session. If you've had training with us, you'll get invited to that. But if you've not, then feel free to join that session. It's a free session online where we're looking at that. David, if I could just summarize some of the you know, some of the great points you made. You know, I think what came out very strongly was that values, integrity to the school mission through whatever you do. Obviously, the massive amount of communication and consistent and sharing that up. Trust kept coming up, which is a great leadership point. And the point, you know, that came implicitly and explicitly about leaders removing barriers so that teachers can get on with their job. Obviously, it's a leadership challenge in a different way now because it's online, but that's something that you've been doing. And also being proactive. Yeah, there's going to be negativity. There's going to be things you don't know. But, you know, there's also opportunities out there. There's opportunities. It's really challenging for everyone. But there are opportunities for that. I'm just going to say, if you want to send any messages to me, you can DM me via Twitter, or you can DM me via LinkedIn. If you follow me on LinkedIn as well, that's another option for that. David, a huge thank you. I know how busy you are. I know you've just come away from a whole Dulwich-wide meeting of all the principals throughout the group. So I appreciate you coming to talk to us all over the world. Huge thanks. You know, this is a feature, I think, of what's happened over the last, you know, few weeks around the world. People have been sharing. People have been very generous with their time and their expertise. Huge thanks. Any final thoughts before we bring it to a close?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing I'd encourage people is to reach out, and certainly I've done that. And I feel very humble to be leading a webinar. This is a first, you know, for me, but also it's a kind of a learning curve. And, you know, I would encourage people to reach out. I didn't put my kind of contacts on, and I know you've got it kind of, Richard, so please kind of share it.
Sure.
I'm on LinkedIn, David Ingram, you know, and please, if you've got questions, I'm more than happy to kind of follow up and answer them kind of individually.
Yeah, and again, I think what I might do, I might do a summary of what you've said, put it out to people, and you know, because it's all about sharing and learning from each other and reaching out. So huge thank you for that. Wherever you are in the world, either this morning or this afternoon or this evening, good luck with the next few weeks. If you are in yeah, middle leaders, you can certainly join that. Send me a DM and I can register you for that. Thank you all for your time and have a lovely day.